Planning and Zoning Commission to order. First up on the agenda is roll call and seating of alternates. And I see Ann Cremay is present. Scott Brisson is present. Steve Nelson's present. And I am present. Are there any other regular members that snuck in at the last minute that I don't have?
I believe Leanne is joining us.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Leanne. Also present are Susan England and Anne Marie Daigle. I don't see Kevin Arneson here tonight. So we've got a full commission. No alternates will be seated. Next item on the agenda is additions or changes to the agenda. And I would like to add a new item. I'll call it 5A, which would be after the executive session. If there was any action that the commission wanted to take it, that would have to be after we got back into the regular meeting. And so that is not currently on the agenda. So I would add potential action from executive session. Anybody else have any comments or changes, additions to the agenda at this point? Hearing none, go on to item 4, which is public comment. I see Catherine Hutchinson has joined us. Do you have any comments for it at this point, Ms. Hutchinson? And you are muted if you wanted to say anything. I'll take that as a no.
Jed, you also have someone on the phone, but that's...
Yeah, I think Leanne is the 5475 number, you?
Yes.
Okay, yep, I thought so. We see you on there twice.
Oh.
Okay, very good. No public comments at this point. The next item up would be is the executive session.
Jed, Jed, do you normally vote to go into executive session?
I was going to make a motion to vote to go into executive session. Yes, sir.
Okay, before we do that, are we clear on the logistics to get in there?
So, yeah. So what we'll do, because we do have a member of the public with us, and you will need to designate who is coming into executive session. What I will do is create a breakout room and invite everyone, all the commissioners and any other members, any other participants that are invited into executive session into that breakout room. I will pause the recording. And so, people who have not been invited in will just be basically essentially left behind in the Zoom room until the executive session is over and the commission returns.
And for people who might come in while the executive session is going on, did you say something about posting something or making it clear somehow that
yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I will let me see. Yeah, I'll put a message in the waiting room. Obviously there is nobody in the waiting room, but if there is anyone shows up in the waiting room, I will let them know.
Okay.
And you're ready to create that breakout room at this point, John?
Yeah. Well,
after we make our motion?
Do your vote first. I'll hit the pause recording and then I'll open up the breakout room.
Okay. So at this point, I'd like to make a motion that we enter executive session. This would include all commission members, including the alternates, zoning agent Hallisey, attorney Alan Curto, town planner John Gazowski, town administrator Eric Anderson.
Second that.
Ann, you seconded? Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Anybody else that should be in there, or somebody that I included that should not be in there? Hearing none, I'll take a vote on the move to enter executive session. Ann?
And
Yeah.
Yep.
Aye.
Did you vote aye for executive session?
Yes.
Okay. Scott?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes 5-0. Do you record? Okay, and with that, I will make a motion to begin I forget the term that you used there, Alan.
Would say a motion to authorize enforcement action.
That's it. Yep, that's what I was missing. I make a motion that we authorize enforcement action as of tonight.
Second.
Thank you, Leanne. Any discussion on that motion?
Well, if I could, I can't suggest an amendment, but just to be clear, what parcel we're talking about, and
Okay. Yep. So, well, I will amend the motion then, and I will make a motion to begin legal enforcement action of the gravel pit at 517 Route 6 as of tonight.
I'll second that, Jed, if you.
Thank you, Scott. Any other discussion? And my assumption is that if we don't hear something back by the next meeting, then we can take subsequent more significant action. Any other discussion? I'll call for a vote. Ann?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Steve?
Sorry, aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you, everybody on the commission. Thank you, Alan. I think that's all we needed you to be here for tonight.
okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan.
Yep. Take care, folks.
Okay, good
Thank
night.
you, Alan.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just a note, Catherine Hutchins said at the beginning of the meeting, before you went into executive session, you had asked for public comment. She was unable to unmute herself at that time. And I popped out of executive session for a moment just to make sure that she was in the room and understood what was going on. And she indicated that she would like an opportunity just to maybe ask a question or be recognized because she had technology issues at the beginning.
This is
Okay.
Catherine Hutchinson, and I have no questions. I was very frustrated because I couldn't unmute. I finally did, and he was gracious enough to tune me in. So I explained what happened, but I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is new business, which there is none. Next item after that is old business. First up is the venue for planning and zoning commission meetings moving forward. And so I went out and solicited input from all the attendees at the meeting. Didn't hear back from everybody, but there were a significant, I guess there were several folks that would attend virtual only. And then, there were fewer number that liked the idea of in-person. And there were a bunch of people that said, while they would probably attend virtually, they were okay with doing a hybrid. We talked about the acoustics in the community center. I know that Ann Cremay reached out to the school and we could use the library there. I spoke with Eric today, who thinks that probably by July we would be able to be in the new senior center. There's a smaller room in there that I think maybe the acoustics would be better. And so rather than go through the what might seem to be minor learning curve of using Andover Elementary School for a hybrid location, I thought that I would hold off for now until we had access to the community building, the senior center, and look at maybe doing a hybrid at that point. You know, there were a couple of things that where I know the meetings run very well from the Board of Education in the library. I don't know that I should expect that we would get the same kind of setup there. And by the time I figure out how to do everything to make that work, it will be close to July anyhow. So at that point, based on the input I got from the commission members, my thought is at this point, we'll continue to do virtual only until such time as we can maybe do some hybrid meetings in the community center, senior community center. So that's my update on the venue for Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. Any other comments or questions on that one?
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
So I would just, and I think I may have mentioned this at a previous meeting, but just as a reminder, the state statutes that changed relative to freedom of information and public meetings indicated that commissions are, free to choose to have meetings in person, hybrid, or virtual only. But if you choose to have a in-person meeting and one of your commissioners, one or more of your commissioners requests a virtual accommodation, you must accommodate it. So, so if someone is fairly adamant or certain that they want to participate virtually, you're going to have at least a hybrid meeting, if not all virtual.
Understand. Thanks, John.
Mm-hmm.
Next up under old business was an update of the plan of conservation and development. And John, I was going to turn over to you if you had anything for us tonight on that.
Yeah, I have just a short overview of a couple of things, and I don't want to belabor this because I know we spent a lot of time in the executive session, but I wanted to present a couple of just concepts and maybe begin to think about sort of thematic structure of the plan, kind of going forward, talking about vision. So I'm going to buzz through just a couple of quick things, and I'll show you this. So can you see this? It's a PowerPoint slide.
Yep, got it.
Okay. So I just wanted to give you guys some concepts of how a couple of different approaches to thinking about community and thinking about looking at a community in its totality. So AARP rolled out about a year and a half ago, I think, what they call their Community Livability Index. And they look at 7 or 8 different modes of community and essentially rate different communities essentially by zip code on those modes. So I pulled up Andover 06232 and where it fits. And so basically the overall livability index for Andover is 50. Average nationwide is 47. They tried to calibrate it so it was basically a 0 to 100 in terms of a livability index. So it's Andover is just slightly into the top half of communities. You know, the basic demographics, we've talked about this. The interesting thing is some of the things on the right here, and a lot of this, you know, these are statistical indicators. 13% of the population with a disability, life expectancy 85, which I believe is slightly higher than national. Basically, all households have a vehicle, fewer than 1% without. Median household income of just under 95,000. Small percentage below poverty, and their upward mobility score is 87, which I think is a combination of a lot of those factors: disability, vehicles, life expectancy, and income. Going through a couple of
John,
those.
before you go on,
Yeah, of course.
I was surprised that the median income was less than 100,000. You know, but I guess I thought that the median income was maybe 105,000 with
Yeah.
when we were talking about that. So that came in
Yeah.
low.
It's and we can dig into where the sources of the data are, but I assume this is probably American Community Survey data.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So
And I guess the other thing that surprises me is a small number of people below the poverty level, and I don't know where I heard or read something about you know, the number of clients that our food bank has, or you know, and it was a significant number of families that rely on our food pantry, and so I guess only
Well,
3% below poverty. I guess you can be above poverty and still need little help, is what that's saying.
significantly, yeah. And poverty level is very low. It's well below, I think, the income that you would need to live in Andover with real estate prices, taxes, vehicle costs, and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's you know, poverty is just an income thing. It doesn't include, you know, consideration of expenses and cost of living. Um, so it goes through a couple of these factors and again, so they look at livability in a number of ways. So housing is one, which and again, these are all rankings for Andover, a little bit lower than the national average, I think, because there are fewer multifamily units. Housing costs are higher um, than they are sort of nationally on average. Um, the cost burden has decreased. It used to be about 25%, now it's about 17%. But there's not as much subsidized housing. So there are certain measures that are getting better. There's a little bit more multifamily. Housing costs had come down between 2015 and 2023, but it's still much more expensive, and you know, fewer multifamily and subsidized housing options. Neighborhood proximity and security, again, about average, maybe a little bit below. Not much access to grocery stores, and Farmers Park, obviously in town. That they indicated access to libraries, but no libraries, which I think obviously is both statistically and factually incorrect. So I think there's an American Community Survey statistical error there. Diversity of destinations is below national average and decreasing. Activity density, and again, that's jobs and people per square mile. Obviously, we have a low density of people and jobs, very low crime rate, although increasing slightly. I'm sorry, no, decreasing slightly. So it's and in the best tertile, and very and an increasing vacancy rate, but again, still not that much vacancy. So the again, slightly below average on that. Transportation, again, about the same, 44, 45. Not that much local transit. There's, let me see, where are we? About average in trips per household per day. Very little congestion, obviously. Household transportation costs are relatively in line, are actually a little bit more expensive than the median and the national. view, about average speed limits, about average crash rates. So it's an overall average rank in there. Environment ranks quite well, 61 out of 100. Good drinking water quality and improved. There are very few people exposed to drinking water violations. Same with air quality, good air quality. No, in their statistical analysis, no near roadway pollution. I think because of, there's not interstates, there's not a lot of, massive truck traffic, and then very little industrial pollution. So the environment is in generally good shape. Health, in terms of prevention, access, quality, fewer people smoke. Fewer people are actually, obesity is creeping up a little bit, but still lower than the national averages. There's decent, maybe average access to exercise opportunities. There is it's a good healthcare professional access. Sort of average preventable hospitalization rates, and decreasing patient satisfaction in terms of care. And again, this is, so that places it sort of in the middle. Community and civic and social engagement. Decent rates of broadband in terms of availability and speed. Good opportunity and increasing opportunity for civic involvement. They're increasing number of organizations. Decent voter rate, a little higher than average. Low, relatively, social involvement index. I'm not sure exactly what that is. We can dig into it a little bit. And decent number of cultural arts and entertainment institutions per 10,000 upper tertile. And then the last sort of axis of analysis is opportunities, which is inclusion and possibilities, and this is the highest rank that Andover scored. Basically an average but slightly decreasing or slightly increasing income inequality number. Again, better than average but still declining jobs per worker. Very, very good high school graduation rates, 97% in 2023. So that's much higher than the median. And a decreasing age diversity. So again, as we saw with the demographics discussion we had a couple of weeks ago, that Andover is becoming sort of a little bit more uniformly aging than it had been. But it's the possibilities and opportunity in Andover are rated relatively high in terms of livability. So what does this all mean? Not that much necessarily. It's just one way of sort of looking at the population and the resources in Andover. But what I thought was more interesting generally was those categories. Thinking about how we plan for Andover, looking at not only traditional housing or transportation, but also things like opportunity and engagement and community inclusiveness. So that's one quick analysis. The other thing I wanted to share is that the state of Connecticut is up in the process of updating their plan of conservation and development, and they're at a draft stage right now. They're looking to have a 5-year plan adopted in early 2025 for the next 5 years. The state plan has been very vanilla for the last 15 to 20 years, and they've basically kept the same structure and the same 6 growth management principles intact, unchanged, really unaltered in any way for over 20 years in the state. But this current plan that they're drafting, which is formally called the Conservation and Development Policies Plan, they're looking at this very differently. And I thought it was an interesting way to look at planning. So they look at this as you can see on the right, as a pyramid, guiding principles, sort of the bedrock guiding principles at the bottom, going into visions, which are sort of priorities for the next 5 years, to be considered somewhat holistically, and then implementation measures, which are sort of the action steps, and then the policies that will guide sort of state growth. Wanted to look at those visually when we talk about sort of the baseline guiding principles. The state is establishing these 4 big principles: sustainable, equitable and just, vibrant, and resilient. So instead of, again, breaking things down in terms of transportation, housing, economic development, conservation, open space, infrastructure, they have these guiding principles that will sort of form the foundation of all of the plans to come as they get farther up the pyramid. And so I thought that was a very interesting, and it's a significant departure from what the state has done before. And good, interesting categories: resilient, vibrant, equitable and just, and sustainable. And then going up the pyramid, they have the visions. And this is 5 basically statements that they want to see happen in Connecticut as a whole over the next 5 years. And those are a thriving economy, housing for current and future residents, stewardship of resources, healthy people and places, and connected and inclusive communities. And so what they showed here in this sort of multicolored Venn diagram is the intersection of some of these things. So when you look at, a thriving economy and stewardship of resources, issues of brownfield redevelopment slips into there, or, connected and inclusive communities and housing for current and future residents, issues of broadband or housing cost burden. So, again, this is sort of a presentation without conclusion. But I wanted to let you know a little bit about what sort of the state is thinking and how they are sort of restructuring their planning process, which, again, the town of Andover's Plan of Conservation and Development will be adopted after this Plan of Conservation and Development at the state level is adopted, because this will happen basically in January, and we're looking, probably sometime in, mid 2025, that our plan in Andover will have to somehow reflect or respond to what the state is doing. And so I just thought it was very interesting, and something that we should think about and ultimately talk about is, how do we want to think about visioning or establish sort of a framework for what the plan is going to look like and how it is going to be structured. And so I wanted to give you those 2 examples of sort of different ways of thinking about communities holistically. And I'll stop there, but just to say, what I would like to do, perhaps at the next meeting, is begin to talk about the vision and to sort of hear from all of you. I think in a kind of an open-ended way, to kind of talk about the good and the bad of Andover, and what we want to see happen over the next 10 years, and then begin to kind of feel out what we want the structure of our vision and our plan to be. So that's my pitch for the evening.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. Any questions for John at that point?
Yeah, Chad, I have a question. John, on the livability index, you mentioned that the national average was 47 and we're at a 50, which is great. But I'm wondering, would there be a benchmark for similar sized towns within Connecticut that maybe have, significantly higher scores than us? We might be able to learn from them in terms of improving our scores.
I think that's a really interesting idea. I like that. The way that this is structured, I don't know if they do cohorts. So what I can do is check those other places individually. And so if we had some thoughts about who we'd like to sort of benchmark ourselves against, I'm happy to put together a little side by side. So what do we think? Who does Andover measure themselves against?
Good question. I don't know other similar towns, like, I used to live in Ashford. I don't know what their score is, but they're a similar sized town.
Sure. So towns of 2,500 to 5,000, something like that.
That's what I would think would be interesting. There's no point in us comparing ourselves to, major cities or even towns like 100,000 people or even 50,000.
So yeah, I mean, a community like,
Marlboro.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then even some more distance. I mean, a town like Chester has about 4,000 people.
Yeah.
Someplace like, sort of western rings of Hartford on the other side, like a Burlington kind of thing, or
Mhm.
Sure.
I mean, the one thing I would suggest the commission does is try to get as visionary with the POCD as you can. I mean, really think about what is the community you want to live in? Describe it, close your eyes and describe how you would go about your life in your ideal community and all the assets and attributes you would want in that. And then start building a plan collectively for how you get there. And that's really what, the name of the game is understand what you want and then understand, try to come up with a plan to get from where you are now to where you want to be.
Yeah, I think that's well put, Eric. I think that's to a certain extent. I want to get into that exercise maybe next time and actually have people
Mhm.
put into words some of those big ideas.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Eric. I'm just thinking there are other towns of our comparable size that probably have, we all have the same vision. We want to live in utopia, right? But maybe they've gone on this journey already, and maybe there are things we can learn from them that would help us with our plan.
Why limit yourself to the US?
Well, that's a fair point. And in the Netherlands, they build communities that are basically self-sustaining, and you just ride your bicycle. You don't even need a car. So
Oh, you're getting Eric excited now.
I know Eric rides a bike, so but I mean, yeah, there are in Europe, there's a lot of communities that way ahead in that regard.
Well, if you think about trying to address, the cost of living, John just showed the statistic that the average household spends $18,000 a year on their automotive transport. I mean, think about the cost savings, considering the median income, is right around $100,000. That's saying 18% of your income is just transportation.
Mm-hmm.
How happy would a family be if they could shift half of that and get down to $9,000?
Yeah, it's a great point.
An extra $800 a month.
Yep. And that's a multifaceted problem. It's public transportation, senior transportation, it's bicycling and walking to destinations and designing the town so that's amenable to that. But like when I go to Europe, I stay with a friend of mine in a town called Bad Zwischenhausen, which is about 2 to 3 times the size of Andover. It's more a Hebron size, but there are bike paths everywhere. There's a train station in town with bike parking for a couple of thousand bicycles because it's a bedroom community. Everybody takes the train into where their job is and they ride their bicycle to the train station and lock it up and take the train into work. It's rethinking fundamentally how, what the community would be like. And then dragging people there kicking and screaming, John, I do have one further question. Yeah. I know the legislature was contemplating adding a whole bunch more things to the minimum requirements for the POCD. How has that played out in the General Assembly? Do we know yet?
I think it was passed out of committee, so it's in the in the hopper for being brought up on the floor. I definitely didn't get the sense that it's anyone's major priority. And I've had a couple of conversations with leadership and the planning and development committee, and it's nobody's uh massive like number one priority going forward. And it's possible that you could take some of that stuff like I think they were looking at um using sea level rise or storm frequency numbers and incorporating that in the POCD essentially as like a hazard mitigation thing. That could very easily get cobbled onto some other piece of legislation that gets passed. But as a standalone thing, I don't get the sense it's a huge priority, but it's still a lot.
So you look for that in the implementer bill and
Yeah.
the last minute implementer bill. Okay, thank you.
Although, well, yeah, it'll be some other piece of legislation. This is not a budget year, so I don't think we'll have a budget implementer this year, unless they do. Do they do adjustments? Maybe they do.
They do.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else for John?
And
Moving-
if you want, Jed, if people are interested in the little presentation, so you can take a closer look, I'd be happy to share it out.
That'd be great. Yep. Yeah,
I'll send it to you.
I think that would be helpful. Next item up under old business is Planning and Zoning Commission appointment to the Capital Region Council of Governments Regional Planning Commission. And I did attend a recent meeting of that. There were several alternates of commissions that were members of that group. There were several chairs and vice chairs that were members of that group. So I guess I will just make sure that I'm not overlooking an eager person to go participate in that and bring us back the information. They're also working on their plan of conservation and development now. But last time I asked, no hands went up on wanting to be a member of that esteemed group. And there are some advantages, to at least have people in attendance at the meetings so that, when we're asking them for help, whether it's financial knowledge or whatever, they know who we are and know we support them and come out to give us a little help there. So I will ask one more time if there's somebody that would like to be either a primary or an alternate to that group. They meet 4 times a year for, maybe an hour or so a time. Okay. So with that, John, I was wondering if we could make you the primary and I would be the alternate for that.
I don't think I could be wrong. I don't think staff can be primary. I think primary needs to be a planning and zoning appointee.
Okay.
But I'm happy to, insofar as I'll be participating, I'm happy to represent Andover as well.
Okay, then I guess I will be the primary and we'll make you the alternate, and you will assist us as much as you can.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Next item up is the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting on March 19th, 2024. Any discussion on those minutes? Any comments about them? And I had no comments on that. So hearing none, I make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting on March 19th as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Scott.
Steve.
Any other discussion?
That was Steve.
Yeah.
Oh, yep, that's right. And I knew that was Steve's voice too. I don't know why Scott came out, but
That's
there you
okay.
go. Thank you. Call for a vote. Ann,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Leanne. Leanne, you're muted.
Aye.
Thank you. I vote aye as well. The minutes are approved by a vote of 5-0-0. Next item is administrative reports, starting with the zoning agent, Jim.
Yes, a fair amount of activity in the building office. A lot of drainage issues coming in, which isn't particularly zoning, but nonetheless, it tends to be time consuming. I did meet with representatives from the Connecticut Meditation Society, who own the property at 131 Route 6. They have been operating a place of worship there for a few years on a minimalist basis, and I had contacted them to come in for a site plan review, which is an allowed use in that zone. And I spent an hour and a half with two folks from their organization and went over the application process. And they are proposing to put up a new building. I hope to have an application. I really don't think it will be until June. But I'll follow up with that. I have not been in contact as yet with the Mountain of Worship on Shoddy Mill, which is some sort of worship church that has been there for a number of years and has kind of been kind of slid under the radar, I think. I intend to contact them. I only wanted to take on one religious organization at a time. I am getting a number of blight complaints. There's a few on Route 6, sent out letters. And the way the blight process works is I send out a notice. Very often I send out a letter and just let people know informally, and then I send out a notice of violation. But then there's a second notice that has to go out, which gives them the opportunity to appeal. So I'm in the process. I sent out 2 notifications recently for on Route 6 properties that had complaints. Getting a few other complaints coming in. I do have an updated list, which I do intend to post. I don't believe it has been as of yet. I am working on a fee schedule. I thought I would have it ready for tonight. Don't. It's comparing fees around with about 10 different towns for everything from zoning permits to subdivisions. It got a little more complicated than I thought, but I should have it ready by next month. That I did happen to notice a new training availability through Clear. I don't have the exact information, but I will try and post it tomorrow on the website. But I believe it's coming up shortly. Just for those of folks who need the ongoing continuing ed credits, it might be something they're interested in. That's all I have at the moment. Any questions? Be happy to entertain them.
When you said you had a lot of drainage issues, are we talking water draining from one property to another?
Yes, pretty much, yeah. And I mean, the reason I mention it is just it's been a time-consuming thing. People come into the office and they're looking for maps and they're looking for solutions, and very often I don't have them. But at least I can sometimes provide them with some information, plot plans that we may have in some direction.
Yeah, could I jump in on that
Yep,
quickly?
go ahead, John.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm obviously not your zoning officer, but I serve as a zoning officer in a number of communities. And I have to say, in the last 6 months, we've received more stormwater drainage complaints, concerns, questions than I have in the last 20 years of doing zoning stuff. It's just incredibly wet and there's nowhere for the water to go. And so it's just, you know, you can't, we would like to issue a cease and desist on Mother Nature, but it's just super wet and people are struggling and people don't want to hear that it's not their neighbor doing something bad and draining onto their property, and we could crack down on it, but it's just a bad it's a bad season.
Yeah, I know I presented to the commission, my limited data collection from last 2 years of the size of the rain events, and certainly 2024 is starting out just crazy in excess of what we've seen in the past as far as every rain's a big rain. And so that there's probably something for our plan of conservation and development with resilience that needs to encompass the fact that we seem to be getting bigger rainfalls lately. Hopefully we won't be in a drought by June, but the rains so far have been plentiful. Any other questions for Jim? Oh, Jim, I know you sent me your little matrix of enforcement actions and where you stand on that. Did you send that out to everybody or was that just to me?
I did not. I will take care of that.
Okay, yeah. And, I think that really does show that there's a lot of issues that are successfully being adjudicated without an awful lot of fanfare, that Jim's doing a lot of stuff out there. So it's worth it to take a look through that after Jim sends that out to you all. Any other questions for Jim? John, you're up. If you got anything else for us tonight.
I have nothing further.
Okay. And
I'm sorry, that's not true. I mean, if you want, I could report. Sorry, you, Jed, and Eric and I did meet a couple of weeks ago. With actually, was it last week? With
Ryan Fitch.
Ryan, thank you. Whose family owns the Christmas Tree Farms and is looking to sell or seek development opportunities on their property, the sort of the most visible property they have on Route 6. And so we sort of talked through some options, talked through zoning implications, and I think they will be probably coming back with a development concept in the foreseeable future. So it was a productive meeting, I thought.
And certainly, when they have that concept fleshed out a little bit, if they want to present that to the commission, that would be great. And we can give them whatever feedback that we can before they spend a lot of money finalizing something. Be happy to add that to the agenda at some point. Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission, again, we had no meeting earlier this month, so nothing to report on that. Commission discussion. Anybody got anything?
Jed, I have a question.
Yep.
We had talked and had the public meeting on the grants for the pedestrian walkway.
Yes.
Have those been submitted now? What's the status on that?
Yeah, John or Eric, you want to?
So which particular one are you interested in?
Well, both, but I think primarily the one along the road 316 there.
So we haven't gotten a final run back from the Capital Region Council of Governments. I have had some ongoing conversations with Satoria, who is the lead transportation person at CROG on that grant program. The long and the short of it, I think it's highly likely that we will get that grant. Simply because, and very strangely, there were less dollars worth of applications than they had funding available. So they basically said, unless there's a fundamental flaw with the application, all the projects submitted will get funded. So you can assume that one will get funded. The second grant we submitted to DEEP to fund a alternative plan from the town hall land that connects to the trail. That one is, I would say, probably unlikely to get funded. DOT's funding, they always have an immense number of applications compared to the funding available. And DEP actually makes their own departments, and parks vie for that same funding pool by applying themselves for projects. So not only are you competing against departments of DEEP that need money, but you're competing against everybody else who has a rec trail application, and there are a ton of them. So long and the short of it is, I don't think I'm going to get that one. Related to planning and zoning, those are the two major ones. I just, with John's help, submitted a legislative request through Senator Murphy's office for the upcoming legislative session or congressional session for about $400,000 to install a generator to run the municipal complex, as well as finish off the community center. And my thinking with that is, if we can shift, not that we don't have money set aside to complete the community center, we do, as soon as we satisfy the requirements and we don't have to pay prevailing wage on the rest of the modifications. But if I can grant fund it through the federal government, I don't have to worry about the time restriction, because those are prevailing wage jobs anyway. And if the federal government's willing to cough up 75% of the cost, that still makes it a lot cheaper for us and gets it done. So that's in the works. On my theme of liking bicycles, I also did put in a small micro grant through the DOT to fund the purchase of 3 e-bikes that would be available from the community center. So if people wanted to check out, and these e-bikes are geared towards transportation, not necessarily recreation. So they'll be set up as what a commuting bike would be. And I got the health department to kick in a little bit of money, and we'll put some, if we get the first grant, I'll use some money from another grant that I have to put in some outside lockers for the bikes. Because I know the Board of Selectmen has some concerns about charging e-bikes, given some of the incidents of fires that have occurred, even though it's pretty rare if you buy a decent quality bike. So that's that. I got a couple other grants in the hopper, one for emergency management services, which I'm pretty sure I'll get, and another smaller one for funding equipment for the senior center, which I also think I would get, because I know what allocation they have for each town. So that's it on the grant front, at least in the short term.
Thanks, Eric.
Keep your fingers crossed.
Any other discussion items? Moving on to miscellaneous. And again, I'm not sure what the difference is between miscellaneous and discussion, but I will remind everybody looking way out there, thank you all for getting the land use training done for the year 2023. That goes on a calendar year. So the next requirement will come due in 2025. And that will also be the year that we got I'm assuming the Connecticut Bar Association will do their one Saturday training session, which is good training and allow you to meet all the training requirements that we have. So that's an easy way to plan to get that done if you can make it. Otherwise, you have to get these little lectures as they come available, and we'll keep trying to point those out to you. Any other miscellaneous topics? Moving on to public comment. I don't think anybody from the public is left with us. So move on. Next meeting, May 21st. That will be a virtual meeting. And at this point, I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes 5-0-0. Thank you, everybody, for attending tonight.